Welcome to another episode of Call to Marriage. I'm Marcia.
And I'm Thomas.
Today we're talking about the reality of sex within marriage. I don't know if this is going to be the reality of sex within marriage or sex within our marriage. But, after we get done talking, those of you married couples, parents, and those, who have gone through the similar stages of life that we have, let us know, does this resonate? Does this sound about right? Does it about sum up the realities of sex within marriage? And we can only go so far too, because we've only been married 4 years. We've gone through, the stage of, not being virgins anymore, and then getting to know each other, and then having a kid and sex after having a kid and all that. But, there's also a stage we haven't hit yet. I haven't been through menopause. I know I've heard things about that. I've heard,
Yep.
We're not in our 40s yet or anything. So we don't know what sex will be like in the second half of life. God willing, we make it that far in life. Praise God. I hope we do. Okay, anyway. But the reality of sex within marriage. And we're going to talk about it from our, perspective. And from, our experience. So, first of all, sex. I'm going to repeat something that I said that was controversial in a previous video, and I'm going to say it again here. Sex is just funny. Not that important.
What?
In life compared to the way society makes it seem. Does that make sense? I'm not just talking about within marriage. I'm first talking about sex in general. Yeah. Whether it's within marriage or whether it's outside of marriage, I think people make so much of sex more than really what it needs to be and what it is.
We idolize it.
A lot of people will have had sex, before they were married, but assuming we followed God's design or the commandment in the Bible, right? Which is that we would abstain from having sex until we're married. And that is what we barely did. So assuming that, we're going to start there, right? So sex within marriage started out for us as being, two virgins who didn't really know each other that well sexually. There's a phase, where you're trying to figure each other out.
It's a learning curve.
Yes. And when I say sex, so within marriage, when I say sex is not that important, a couple of things. One of the ideas that goes floating around is that married couples only have sex. Some people would say only, some people would say it's a lot, but anyway, only have sex about 2 to 3 times a week on average. I didn't look up the stat before this. That's just something I've commonly heard, and I think is like pretty widely accepted. And some people also have a notion that sex is less interesting once you get
married.
And both of those have a level of truth and a level of untruth to them.
Yeah.
And we're going to unpack that. Sex is important in marriage.
Sorry.
It's okay. In general, it is important in marriage, but it's just not as important as it's made out to be, in our opinion. But it becomes important for 2 reasons, right? Like, it becomes important if you're not having sex, and it becomes important if the sex is not quality. So you need to know what you're doing, and you need to be doing it.
Okay.
But once you have that down, once you guys have figured things out, you're kind of in a rhythm between each other as spouses, then it becomes less important, I feel like, you know? So if you haven't figured it out, it's important and you need to figure it out. Right. If you're not having sex, you need to be having sex in your marriage. Yeah. I don't know if I should say need, but I could say it's very good. I mean,
it's a need.
Yeah, it's a need. I would say sexual intimacy is absolutely a need. I'm just kind of like thinking of outliers, I guess, like the extremes of people who may, for one reason or another, not be having sex. Somebody's like really, really sick or whatever. There may be some instance in which,
I know what you mean. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Obviously. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm talking about generally, like within what's normal.
All things being equal.
Right. Everything being typical.
Yeah.
It is necessary. So if you're not having it, that needs to be addressed.
You ought to be having sex in your marriage.
Right. If it's painful, uncomfortable, all those things, that needs to be addressed. But once
Yeah.
you figured it out,
Yeah, you get on a groove, and you get in a groove. You feel like you're a little bit more in control. Even though, I mean, what do we know about our bodies really? But once you're able to sort of hit a plateau and things are working out well, you understand your bodies a little bit. You understand, you have the chemistry, and you're enjoying it. It's it's pleasurable and all that. Then you begin to realize, okay, well, there are other things within the marriage that we need to be paying attention to more than sex. Well, now that we have this down, we're not going to spend a ton of time trying to dig more into it and all that. You just let it grow. It's like a machine. You need to learn to start it. Once you start it, you just leave it for it to work. Right?
Yeah. And then another thing I said on one of our lives one time, and I'll mention it here, is that also like sex a lot of times it reminds me of food. I feel like this is not a new idea. Like I'm sure somebody has said this before, but it's like eating, right? Like sometimes you eat as a matter of function and necessity, and other times you eat for enjoyment. And I feel like sex is the same way. Like sometimes we do it,
Yeah.
as a matter of function. And then other times we do it for fun.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah. There are times when you just know, you just sense that, look, it's been a while.
Yeah.
It's not that you're craving sex.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you guys, you two have been paying attention to something else, and you're not really thinking about sex. But it gets to a point where, based on your level of intimacy, you are going to realize the deficit. Is like, wait, hold on a second. I feel like we haven't had sex in a long time. And then you have it. Mm-hmm. Not really because you were in the mood and you were ready and you really wanted to, but I think it's something within marriage that would not permit you to go for a long stretch while both of you are living in the same house and you're seeing each other. Marriage is such that, like, there's this alarm clock that's gonna sound like, yo,
you just know,
are you guys gonna do it or not? It's like, and then you do it. So that could be out of function. It's like, yeah, of course we have to know each other. Let's get intimate. Mm-hmm. And then you get intimate. And after that, you realize, yeah, we needed this. Mm-hmm. Why weren't we doing it?
Sometimes like, you're not really like, all hot and heavy. But then, like, by the time you're finished, like, man, yeah, like
that's exactly what I need.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is so true for me. There are times that I work a lot. I take care of a lot of things, even our podcast and all that. I work full time. There are times that after being intimate with my wife, I feel like, oh yeah, I needed this. Mm-hmm. But in the midst of everything I was doing, I didn't even consider sex as a need until we have it. And then I realized, yeah, half of my stress is gone. Leaving everything, just taking my hands off everything and being with my wife. And a lot of times it's even more than like the sexual act itself. It's just being together, and of course, plus that. But she helps me. It's like she helps me offload some of the stress. And then I realized, yeah, I needed this. I just didn't know I needed this. Mm-hmm. And it's nice during those moments. I can tell you that. Yeah.
Now, going back to those notions that I mentioned around sex within marriage and the realities of sex within marriage, there are a couple of notions. One of them is that we typically have sex, around 2 to 3 times a week, we married couples. And another one is that sex is less fun once you're married. It's kind of boring and whatever. Now, let's talk about what's true and what's not true. Sex is not boring on the whole, and it's not uninteresting on the whole once you're married. That's absolutely 100% false. But forbidden fruit tastes sweet at first, and in the end, it's typically very, very bitter.
You're turning rebels.
There's something exciting about, sexual activity when you can't have it. Right. And that's why a lot of people fornicate and a lot of people are just out here promiscuous and having sex, because there's an excitement to that. That does die down. When you're married, you have, a safe place. So it has pros and cons, because that dies down a little bit. It ebbs and it flows is what I would say. But the pros outweigh the cons because I am in a safe situation. I feel safe emotionally. I feel safe physically. I have a steady partner, someone who I can rely on. I always have access to, you know, like, or most of the time, you know, and it's like, so there's a level
more often than not.
Yeah. So there's a level of comfort that comes with
security.
Yeah. And security that comes with being married and having sex within marriage.
Yeah.
So is it like, and I didn't have sex outside of marriage, but we did, you know, we were not innocent, totally innocent. And the things we did before marriage, they were fun, even though they came with guilt, because I'm not going to sit here and say that it's right. I'm going to sit here in front of this camera and say, y'all shouldn't be doing, you know, the things that y'all are doing, that y'all ain't married and y'all doing it.
No, okay? It's not. It leaves scratches on your conscience, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, but, right, there's a level of enjoyment to that. So that's, before I go to the frequency, I don't know if you want to add anything to that part.
You can go on.
Okay. So then there's the part of the frequency, that average of 2 to 3 times a week. We got to break that down. So that's probably true. I don't even really pay attention like that. But, you know, it's not a methodical, we having sex Tuesday and Thursday or Monday, Wednesday and Friday, you know, every week or whatever. That's really not how it works out. So the average is like a combination or a culmination of a lot of different seasons of life, of your sex life. So, you know, when we were first married, we were having sex often, especially because we were getting to know one another, you know?
Yeah. In a lot of ways, it was more work, you know?
Yeah, I know,
we were working to set the ground running.
Lay the foundation.
Right. So we had to keep going. We didn't want to lose steam. We didn't want to lose momentum. So we learned something today. And then maybe...
Right, we were trying different things.
Yeah, we were trying to learn, okay, well, what's working? Yeah. So it wasn't really out of, you know, let's enjoy it. Let's enjoy it. It was like... I mean,
it was that too, but it was, you know, it was both.
But it was more work, I would say.
Particularly right in the beginning, it was
right.
Yeah,
in the beginning, we had to, you know, you have to work to even know your own self. Like I said, what do you know about your body?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of exploration, and so that frequency is not equal to the frequency of, you know, like now.
And you know, even that frequency, you know, you have to remember. Maybe I'm just giving examples. Maybe a couple's having sex, you know, 5 days this week and then 4 days the next week. And then, you know, the wife gets her period and that's a whole week, you know, without sex. So we may have it 7 days, every day of the week, 1 week, and 0 days another week. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And for the ladies, I don't know if I'll make a separate video about this, or maybe, I don't know if I'll ever go into more detail about it, but just generally speaking, ladies, we know, like, our menstrual cycle is not just a period, right? It works around your period, but it's like the whole, let's say 28 days, right? Mm-hmm. So you have your period for, let's say, 6 days of the menstrual cycle, but then you're ovulating for some of the days. And then there are so like in different phases of the cycle, you feel differently. And that affects your sex life, right?
Yeah.
Frequency, enjoyment. So, but that's a topic for perhaps another video, maybe not. But anyway, yeah. So the reality is 2 to 3 times, probably.
A week?
Yeah, probably. But it doesn't look like exactly 2 to 3 times, you know, every single week. It ebbs and flows in the different seasons of life. So we had the newly married season. There was more sex. Then we had the pregnant season. And when I was pregnant, it was like, increasingly less sex as I became overall more uncomfortable. Yeah. And then there's postpartum, which is like even less sex. A baby just came out of my body. So
Yeah, that's like zero right there.
For at least 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And for a lot of ladies more, depending on what kind of experience you had, in birth.
That's nail.
and then all of a sudden you're better. And then sex gets good, and it's like, and the frequency increases again. And then you're like, so there's an ebb and a flow. It's like, different seasons of life call for different things. You're starting to ramp up again, but then the baby's sleeping schedule is you're still trying to figure out how to work your sex life around your new baby. Mm-hmm. But then that works itself out. And then you're in like this really nice phase, but then probably you get pregnant again. We hope there's different things that happen, and you just have to be understanding of one another and realize that is the reality of marriage. Like, marriage entails a lot and has different seasons, just like life in general. And so your sex life is going to also fluctuate with the seasons of life. Like,
yeah, it's like a sporting season, you train and then you compete and then, you win the trophy,
rest a little bit.
And then you're going into recession, you rest a little bit, and then you have preseason, and then, training starts again, and then you play. So nothing is constant. Even our bodies are not constant. So there isn't one set of times where you have sex and that's it. Like, so if you go into marriage like that, you're going to be disappointed. Mm-hmm. That's the point. Things change and you have to adapt. Mm-hmm. At different times, you have to use different skills. I don't know what to call them. Like, at some point, you have to exercise self-control.
Absolutely. That's why abstinence is good, too, before marriage, because you've already trained yourself and disciplined yourself in that way. So you will have self-control in the seasons of life when sex is not as frequent.
Right. So... yeah, sex really teaches a lot. It teaches a lot about, it's going to teach you about yourself. Love is beyond sex. When your spouse, like when you got pregnant, she was at her most vulnerable state. Would you just be obsessed about your sexual life, or you would want to lay that aside and take care of her and, put her first? So it really reveals a lot about who we are, and it's good. I think it's a good cycle. If you give yourself to it, it's going to teach you, it's going to mature you, it's going to nurture you, it's going to show you other things that are also important, if not more important, which is why we're saying sex is not, it's not like how society has idolized it. Like when you watch a movie, it's like it's the most important thing in a marriage. It is important, but it hangs on a lot of things. Mm-hmm. You want to step in?
I was just gonna add one little thing too, that as being married, I have the rest of my life to have sex with you, so I'm not in a rush to have every.
What's the rush for?
Yeah, I'm not in a rush. Yeah. Some people are getting as much sex as they can because, I don't know, maybe they're just dating someone casually and they don't know when the fun's going to be over and they're going to be single for 6 months, no sex,
that's right.
But for me, you're always here for me. I'm always here for you. So
that's the beauty of marriage.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sex, as important as it is, and it is important in marriage, but sex is set on a lot of things. Sex, if your finances are not good in the house, if the baby is sick and you're running in and out of the hospital, if there is tension, if you're stressed, you're not going to enjoy sex
as much.
Yeah. So sex is not independent. Sex is set on other things. It hangs on other things.
I see what you're saying.
So if you think sex is the most important thing in a marriage, well, okay, wait until you get an eviction notice and you don't know where to get the money from. And tell me that you're going to have the best sex in the world during that season. Wait until your child is hospitalized and you don't have insurance, You don't know where you're gonna, cough out that money from, and your child is getting sicker and sicker. Where is sex? Gone. Off the roof. You're not even going to think about it. So sex is important, but it's set on other things. And if you don't take care of those other things, you're not going to enjoy sex as much. So other things affect sex. It's not some kind of independent thing that it doesn't matter what is going on in the home. If your wife feels disrespected in the home, you think you're going to enjoy having sex with her? Your husband doesn't feel respected in the home, and you think all of a sudden, once you start having sex,
sex is not like a medicine that cures, every problem in your marriage. It can help sometimes, but especially if you're having a root issue, like an issue with some of the fundamental things of marriage.
Right.
Yeah, sex is not going to be able to cover it up. It's not going to be able to solve it.
Yeah.
You're going to have to address that thing. So, yeah, like I said there in another video, there are 24 hours a day. And there are so many other things we do in those days besides sex that have more priority on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
It is important.
It is.
Not saying it's not. But, those other things really do matter. And if everything else, if the other things are going well, to your point, it only helps with your sex life. So do pay attention to the other things because they're important and they will improve your sex life. Communication.
Yeah.
Finances. Security in the marriage. Trust. Those things are in order.
Yeah. And we're not even talking about this, your mental state. Sometimes even when, things are not as chaotic as we're describing it, your body, it's like your physiology is, it plays into your sex life, your mental state, stress, and all these other things affect sex. So if you want to have quality sex, you have to be paying attention to all these things. So I look at sex as, in many ways, it's an indicator of the home,
The thermometer.
Right. It's like it's gonna measure, like, if your spouse is hesitant to have sex with you, well, there's a problem there somewhere. If one of you that it's kind of like pulled away a little bit and a little bit reluctant, there's a problem there. It's showing. It's like, well, here's the time for us to get intimate, but it's not even flowing. Like there's no flow. It's not as natural as it should be. Or maybe there are issues there.
Particularly if it's consistent, because I will say this. Speaking of the realities of sex within marriage, sometimes, like I said, especially when it's that matter of function aspect, sometimes you're doing it because you know it is important, but you don't start out with a level of, with that much enthusiasm. Yeah. But if it's always like that, and also if it doesn't end with enthusiasm, if it's like that throughout, and if it's like that consistently over time, that's definitely an indication of a problem.
Yeah.
But sometimes, you start out tired, but everything works out in the end.
It builds up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So, but yeah, there are things that can be red flags. I understand your idea about it being a thermometer. Yeah. That makes sense. Well, that's all I had to say today. The reality of sex within marriage is it's nuanced, and I obviously it's God's design, and it's important. It really is important. It's just not so super important like society would have you think it is. When you're the realities of becoming a parent and really raising children, raising a family, growing a family.
Mm-hmm. Building a home.
Yeah, there's so much more I think that's important in terms of the family unit and building a home.
Yeah.
And building, your marriage.
Yeah.
Just one aspect.
Yep. Just don't be deceived if you're going into marriage. And it's so well what that means is if you're going into marriage and you're basing everything on sex, maybe you should rethink, because it's not going to be all about sex.
Mm-hmm.
If that's the only thing influencing the spouse you choose and all of that, and you're ignoring all the other things because you're hyped up. That's not all there is in marriage.
And I know we're talking about marriage, but if you're not married watching this, if that's what's mainly driving, your relationship, that's also a red flag. Because I think a lot of people know that marriage is not hinged on sex, and when they know, like, a lot of people say, I don't know how true it is, that men know pretty immediately whether somebody is like wife material, whether somebody could be their wife.
Yeah.
So I think they know that they're in that moment, they're not basing it on sex, because immediately they probably a lot of times wouldn't have even had sex yet. Yeah. Yes. But what'll happen is that when you start having sex, a lot of times people will stay long in relationships they don't need to be in because of sex. So sex is driving the relationship, not marriage. If it was for marriage, you would have been broke up because you already know that person is not, for you. But the sex is elongating unnecessarily a bad relationship.
Yep.
So don't make it the central focus,
Open your eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Society would have you think that's all there is. No, that's not all there is.
And lastly, I want to reiterate that if you are having, troubles in that department in your marriage, then it is important. It needs to be addressed. If you guys are not enjoying yourselves, if you're not enjoying the wife of your youth, if you are not having sex, but you guys are typical, like you don't have any health issues or whatever, for some reason you guys just aren't having sex.
Yeah.
If you have some major concern about your sex life, do, confide in the appropriate party or parties to get some help with that. And certainly, first of all, have a heart to heart with your partner, have an honest conversation, try to get as much to the bottom of it as you can. And then if it's necessary to bring somebody in, do that.
Yeah. Get help, because it can break a marriage. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So get help. And don't let it wreck the marriage. Mm-hmm. All right.
Love you.
Thank you for staying with us. See you on the next episode. We love you.
Yes. And we appreciate you, and comment below.
Yeah. Let us know what you think.
Yeah. Even if you disagree,
Yeah, of course. All right. See ya. Bye.